The core tenet of the post-war system state sovereignty was just physically and surgically violated. A sitting head of state was extracted from his capital like a common fugitive, not by a protracted war, but by precision designed to remove one man and transfer him immediately to U.S. jurisdiction in New York.
This is Neural Pulse. Let's analyze.
Okay, let's jump right in, because the sheer audacity of Operation Absolute Resolve, which, went down on January 3rd, has fundamentally rewritten the rules.
It really has.
This was not the shock and awe doctrine of the past. The U.S. military didn't flatten infrastructure. They executed an almost invisible, highly sophisticated strike aimed squarely at command and control.
It was a demonstration. A demonstration designed not to defeat an army, but to decapitate the state. The strategic assessment suggests the aim was to send a very specific, very personal message.
About this, what we're now calling the New Monroe Doctrine.
Exactly.
And the military data confirms this precision strike philosophy. Analysts are confirming U.S. forces hit only 4 strategic nodes in the Caracas area.
Just 4.
They struck Fort Tiuna, which houses the regime's military command structure. They neutralized La Carlota Air Base to guarantee the head of state couldn't use it for an air escape. They established a sea blockade at La Guaira Port, and then secured El Higuerot Airport.
The last way out.
The last alternative route. So the outcome was swift and personal. Maduro and his wife detained, transferred to U.S. soil to face drug charges.
And that single act, that physical extraction, carries more strategic weight than years of sanctions ever could.
So if we look at the immediate regional fallout, what does this functionally achieve beyond just removing one leader?
Well, it completes the transformation of the Monroe Doctrine. I mean, for every hostile leader in the Western Hemisphere, the message is chillingly clear.
Which is?
That physical borders and national militaries no longer guarantee your personal security if you actively cross U.S. interests. State sovereignty has, in effect, become conditional.
We saw the immediate condemnation, of course. Lula in Brazil called it a blatant violation of international law.
Which it is, by the old rules.
Yeah.
But that highlights the fear across the global South that power, not consensus, is the only principle left.
But anger doesn't translate into resistance, and that seems to be the strategic paralysis Washington was banking on.
Absolutely. Look at Mexico.
Yeah.
They protested, yes, but they were quick to emphasize that security cooperation with the U.S. would continue. They simply can't afford a break.
And then there's the silence. Europe's reaction. It was a conspicuous kind of collective strategic silence.
That silence is the sound of concession. It's a painful progression toward what you might call vassalization.
So they're sacrificing the moral high ground.
They are. Traditional allies like France and Germany, they've calculated they cannot afford a confrontation with the current U.S. administration. They're essentially conceding the West's moral authority for short-term stability.
And that stability ties directly into energy, which is maybe the deepest lever pulled here. Morgan Stanley is projecting a massive market shift.
A huge one.
If U.S. capital and technology can restore Venezuela's heavy crude production, they predict Brent prices could be pushed down into the mid-$50.
That is a devastating, almost weaponized blow to rival petrostates, Russia, Iran. They depend on crudes staying in the $80s or $90 just to fund their budgets. This single operation could deliver a massive geopolitical advantage to Washington.
So that show of naked unilateral power was followed just days later by an equal show of institutional abandonment on the global stage. Let's shift that. On January 7th, the White House announced it was leaving 66 international organizations.
This is more than America first. This is America alone in action. It's the death knell for the post-war multilateral order as we knew it.
We're talking about 31 UN agencies alone. The UNFCCC, so out of the Paris Agreement again, the UNHRC, UN Women.
Even the UN University. The rationale from the White House was sharp. They're wasteful, inefficient, and controlled by globalist or woke ideologies.
And the financial consequence is immediate.
It's brutal. The U.S. is the largest contributor. The UN Secretary General warned this creates a system-wide funding crisis, gutting peacekeeping operations and refugee aid. The UN's ability to function is now, structurally compromised.
So as Washington demolishes the framework, what's fascinating is how quickly China moved to step into that vacuum.
They moved instantly. They are masters of positioning, and they have declared themselves the new defender of multilateralism.
They're using this to push their own model of global governance through 3 key initiatives, right?
That's right. And we need to detail them, because they represent the only clear alternative to the Western model on offer.
Okay, so first up is the Global Security Initiative, the GSI.
Right. It promotes indivisible security and, crucially, non-interference. It's essentially a security club with no moral or human rights entry requirements, which is, of course, very attractive to authoritarian regimes.
And the economic layer.
That's the Global Development Initiative, GDI. It links their Belt and Road project directly to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. It sort of standardizes the Chinese development model, making it look legitimate under the UN umbrella.
And finally, the ideological component.
The Global Civilization Initiative, or GCI. This gives the theoretical backbone to reject Western interventionism. By emphasizing civilizational diversity, China is creating a philosophical argument for states to dismiss concepts like universal human rights.
So the U.S. exit basically lets these Chinese frameworks become the de facto international standards.
In vast swaths of the world, yes. Simply because there's no competing vision left.
And that transition from institutional vacuums leads us directly to the sharpest edge of economic warfare, specifically in the Indo-Pacific.
The weaponization of trade.
Let's look at what's happening with Japan.
The world is now treating economic interdependence not as a driver of peace, but as a weapon.
Exactly right. In early January, China's Commerce Ministry strictly regulated, let's call it what it is, a de facto ban on the export of rare earths and high-performance magnets to Japan.
And the trigger was explicit. Retaliation for PM Takaichi's statement about Taiwan. China is using an economic chokehold to dictate Japanese security policy.
And Japan is profoundly vulnerable. The data shows they're 66% dependent on China for rare earths, even more for critical heavy ones like dysprosium and neodymium.
It's like China controlling the only source for the specific screws that hold all of Japan's high-tech products together.
And it targets two huge sectors simultaneously. First, the defense industry.
Right. It directly threatens production for stealth fighters, missile guidance systems, drones. China is trying to halt Japan's rearmament before it gets going.
And second is the civilian industry. EVs, electronics. The magnets are essential. Japan's auto sector could face a production halt within months.
It's immediate economic pain. Now, Japan did learn from the 2010 crisis, but this is a whole different ballgame.
So what's their mitigation strategy?
It's two tracks. Bolstering cooperation with Vietnam, which has reserves but lacks processing, and, crucially, deepening the U.S.-Japan framework to build a non-Chinese supply chain.
But the long-term solution is this high-risk gamble, isn't it? The trial deep-sea mining off Minamitarishima.
It is. If it works, it promises centuries of supply. But that offers zero immediate relief. It's a geological solution to a geopolitical crisis.
This confrontation underscores that resources are now geopolitical assets. But while global supply chains are fracturing, we have to pivot to the weird stability of the U.S. domestic economy.
It's the ultimate paradox of the moment, isn't it?
It is. The world is in meltdown, but the U.S. economy is growing, fueled by the One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
Or OBBA, which is essentially a massive targeted stimulus aimed at maximizing short-term consumption and securing key voting demographics.
And the elements are pure consumption fuel. Tips income non-taxable, overtime wages non-taxable, new deductions for car loans and for seniors.
It's a targeted move. It's shifting public policy toward debt-funded consumption over saving.
And the evidence shows it's working, at least in the short term. Q3 2025 real GDP growth hit 4.3%, way above the consensus.
Right. Employment is strong, spending is robust, but this strength comes with a massive price tag for the future.
An explosive one. Projections show the federal debt to GDP ratio could pass 200% by 2054. A staggering level of liability.
Which brings up the critical risk that Janet Yellen warned about. Fiscal dominance. We should probably break that down.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. What does that mean in practical terms for our listener?
It means the Federal Reserve, which is supposed to be the independent inflation fighter, is forced to prioritize absorbing government debt. It becomes the government's banker.
So it's just printing money to cover the check.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Instead of controlling price stability, this risks spiraling inflation down the road, even if the economy looks strong today. It's an invisible structural weakness.
So we've covered physical extraction, institutional abandonment, economic warfare, and a domestic boom built on debt. Now we turn to the invisible battlefield, cyber and space.
Where digital trust is just collapsing.
Let's start with Jaguar Land Rover.
This incident reveals a devastating vulnerability. When everything is connected, a single point of failure can halt a giant.
And what's alarming is the attack method wasn't sophisticated. It was low-tech, human-centric, social engineering.
Phishing. voice phishing.
Right, a phone call to trick someone into defeating multi-factor authentication.
And the impact, horrifying. Wholesales plummeted over 43%. Production halted across 4 countries, all from one successful phone call. It's a huge warning about the attack surface.
Meanwhile, in space, we have the ISS crisis. NASA planning an unprecedented early return for the Crew 11 mission, a serious medical condition requiring the first ever medical evac from the station.
This is a high-stakes test for international cooperation. The crew is American, Russian, and Japanese. On Earth, U.S.-Russia tensions are near Cold War levels.
But in space, they have to rely on each other.
They absolutely do. Their mutual reliance is being severely tested under the most urgent human circumstances.
And a final cyber threat. This new Astaroth malware in Brazil, Boda Cor-de-Rosa.
The key evolution here is the vector. They're weaponizing WhatsApp as a self-propagating worm.
So it exploits the trust you have in your contacts.
Exactly. You trust the sender, so you open the file. The potential for this model to go global is extremely high.
The aggregate anxiety from all this, borders failing, institutions dissolving, it's manifesting in some fascinating societal indicators, especially among the wealthy.
You can read the luxury market as a direct barometer of elite anxiety. Demand is surging for luxury safe rooms.
And these aren't just panic rooms.
No. They're integrated living spaces, bulletproofed, independent air filtration, co-located with wine cellars. It reflects a profound distrust in public security to handle, well, anything. Riots, crime, climate events.
They're preparing for a world where the state can't guarantee their safety.
That distrust extends to family structure. We're seeing a trend toward multi-generational living among the wealthy. It's a rational strategy to consolidate assets and security under one roof.
And finally, this move toward blockchain-verified luxury goods, SMX.
That trend symbolizes the arrival of the zero-trust society. If you can't trust the brand or the seller, you rely on an immutable digital record. Technology is the only guarantor of truth left.
So this comprehensive shift we've analyzed tells a clear, unified story of systemic breakdown.
It does. The world is no longer governed by rules or consensus. We are seeing a return to the naked logic of power. The U.S. is pursuing direct interests. China is building parallel alternatives, and traditional allies are left paralyzed.
Which puts middle powers like Japan in the most difficult position of all. Caught between a transactional ally in the U.S. and an economic antagonist in China, this need for strategic autonomy in defense and supply chains, like that high-risk deep-sea mining.
It's no longer a choice. It's the unavoidable cost of national survival. Neural Pulse. Clarity in a complex world. See you tomorrow.